table. You're going to fill that out with your name and email, and that's not so we can contact you or spam your email or get any other information from you. We just want to go ahead and get a head count of everybody that was here today. But other than that, let's go ahead and give a warm welcome and a round of applause for Pastor Bill Purvis.
Thank you so much. Great job already. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me now? Okay, good enough. Today is going to be a great day because we've got somebody I want to honor. I really want to honor and recognize. I believe that this person has accomplished more and probably not been noticed as much. But I'm going to ask him to make his way up here. And this is Dan Parker. And Dan, there may be two ways. There's a longer route right around there. Walk around that way, and I'll promote him for this, okay? Let me tell you a little bit about Dan before he gets here so that you can see him. You can Google him, by the way, and learn a whole lot about him. He's all over the web. He recently did Jay Leno's garage thing. Several years ago, it was 2012, Dan had a car wreck. He was driving a race car. He's been a race car driver all of his life. He was driving a Corvette, had a wreck at 175 miles an hour. He was in a coma for about 2 weeks. No one thought he would live. If you saw the crash, it was horrible. But yet, he came out of that, and he came out of that blind, though. Can't see anything. But Dan, instead of giving up, went through a time where he builds his own cars. He's built motorcycles. He has actually accomplished a lot. I'll give you some of it as he comes. World's fastest blind race car driver. World's fastest, 211 miles an hour.
Yes, sir.
Unbelievable. I mean, I can't drive 11 miles an hour without running off the road.
Thank you.
Amazing. He's also the world's fastest blind motorcycle racer. Took a motorcycle and ran across the flat. How fast did you go there?
I only went 65 miles an hour with the motorcycle.
Okay.
And then later we developed a new guidance system. It took me 4 years. I designed every aspect of the 2008 Corvette. And then 2022, exactly 10 years to the date of my wreck, I set the Guinness World Record at 211 miles an hour.
Isn't that crazy? Set the world record. He also, like you said, he's in the Guinness World Record book. I want to invite you to, by the way, if you have a company, I ran into Dan a while back. I was at an airport changing planes, and during my exchange, there was Dan getting off the plane, and so we ran into each other then. He was going somewhere to speak then.
Yeah, I was going to Seattle, Washington to speak at a conference for accessibility for the blind.
Yeah, he's great. I saw him recently on the news. You had a young boy that had gone blind, and his parents had him there, and he's like 9 years old, and Dan was giving the boy guidance on what you do when you're blind and how you adapt.
Yeah.
You've been an encouragement to so many. Do you do that often?
I try to. You know, sometimes we don't realize the impact we're having on people till it's after, which is good because that's a genuine impact. But I know that what I do is impactful, but I don't look at it that way. I'm try to stay humble and stay grounded.
Well, you do that well, Dan. Dan has this, he has an attitude that says you can make excuses or you can make it happen. And if anybody's made it happen, I'm sure there are times you wanted to give up, times you probably felt like, is it worth it or can I go any further? But you pressed through, didn't you?
Yes. About 6 months after the wreck, I was fighting deep depression. I was on the verge of suicide. And in a dream one night, it came to me. I get emotional thinking about it. That I would build a motorcycle, become the first blind man to race the Bonneville Salt Flats. I didn't know if any blind man had ever raced the Salt Flats before, but God gave me a purpose. And when he gives you a purpose, he don't tell you the how or why. He just gives you the purpose. And 10 months later, I designed and built the motorcycle. And in 2013, the year after the wreck, I became the first blind man to race Bonneville.
Isn't that crazy? What an inspiration. And even now, one of the things Dan does, he has a shop in the back of his home where he makes, and I would encourage you to buy them, where he makes the best writing pens. I mean, these are classic pens, and they're handmade. And I would encourage you to go online, find them, pick up some for your friends as well. But when Dan was showing me, he said, "Let me show you my shop, Pastor Bill." I said, "Okay." And he's walking like he can see. And he's walking through all these little curves. And he's got machines. And then he says, "Let me make you a pen." And he pulls out his metal stuff. And he's making a pen with all these steel. I would have cut my fingers off. But Dan, being blind, would say, "Watch this. Don't touch that." I said, "How do you see all that?" But you've got it all down. I just admire you. I respect you. Let me ask you this. What are your plans now? What are you doing at the present?
Right now, I'm focusing. I've started a charity. It's called blindfaith.org. And I'm working with Auburn University and Boston University on self-driving bicycles for the blind. End of last year, we had a proof of concept at Auburn, and I rode a bike where my bike follows the lead bike. So let's say Jennifer, I want to go ride the rails to trails. My bike would follow her. And so I'm focusing on that, focusing on building my business. If anybody wants this, theblindmachinist.com.
Yes.
And there's videos on there of me running my machines, the CBS segment. One time we was on the Steve Harvey show. I'm surprised Jennifer walked me up here because last time I had her walk me up on stage, I proposed to her on the Steve Harvey show. So it's worth watching, but you might bring some tissues.
Yeah.
It will make your allergies act up.
That's right. I love you, buddy. Well, listen, I have done something for you. There's so much to talk about with Dan, but I've done something for you I think is really unique, and that is that I've got you a plaque. And the plaque that I've got to give to you says BP Leadership Honors and recognizes Dan Parker as an example of outstanding leadership with Christian values, Daniel 12:3. But my wife, Debbie, said when I was getting it, she said, Nabil, can you get it made also in Braille? And I said, let's find out. And I found a company that can do it in Braille so that you can feel right across as you read it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that?
That's beautiful.
And I'm gonna get you to stand right to the side, and some of you can take the pictures if you want of both of us together. And he's the pretty one, okay? That is so good. Got one? All right.
The last time I looked in the mirror, I didn't have gray hair.
Yeah, last time you looked, it was all dark, wasn't it? I think about you every time I get up in the middle of the night, start to walk just to the bathroom or something and bump into a wall. I say, Lord, how does Dan do it? I can't complain. I love you, buddy.
Thank you so much.
You're the best.
You know, speaking of that, last month, when I attended last month's service here at the luncheon, I had my shirt inside out on accident. And I told everybody at the table, and they said, do you want to go change? I said, no. I said, if that's all I got to worry about today, today's a good day.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
It sure is.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to walk with you back over here with Jennifer. And Jennifer is his precious wife that has loved him, walked with him through everything from the moment of the wreck to this day. Would you give her a hand? What a tremendous help for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Love y'all so
Love you
much.
too.
God
You
bless
got
y'all.
that. Thank you.
All right. He knows how to follow her. My wife's teaching me that. She said when she gets me trained, it'll work out well. Hey, I'm really glad you're here today. Thanks for being here today. I'm glad you're here. And I want to share with you a few things today that I think will be of help to you. Every month of BP Leadership, for those of you that may not know, many years ago, I was teaching this leadership to one man that wanted to learn how to grow. And he said, I can't get a raise at work. I keep getting bypassed. He said, could I just get an hour of your time once a month? And I said, sure. So we started. Ultimately, he started getting raise after raise and got promoted. And he began to bring his friends and say, I learned about leadership here more than I learned in college. And so before you knew it, we filled up a Burger King. Then we went to another restaurant. And then we wound up going where we could do it by way of online and social media all over the country. But we just teach leadership principles. Today, I want to give you what I call 6 tests of a leader. The 6 tests of a leader. And when I talk about these are not all the tests a leader has. You'll have many more, but these are the basic 6 tests. Everybody will have to face it sometime in life if you want to grow. Adam White said this way, the proof of good leadership is a path behind the leader filled with people who become better as a result of the leader's presence. Meaning if you've done good, the fruit will show. You'll see people behind you go in that direction. But becoming a good leader requires testing. And when we talk about testing, we don't even like the word test. It's kind of like oh, no, not another test. Tests make us feel stress. When I was a kid, when my children were little, I would say, guys, let me give you a life lesson. And they would all go, oh, no, not another life lesson. And, they dreaded that. But if you don't get that, you're going to have to learn life anyway. I believe this, that tests are a part of life. I believe whether we admit it or not, we need the test. And I want to get you to embrace today an attitude. This is my test. If you can get that attitude, you can go through life a lot better. Just saying, this is my test. I'm being tested here. How am I going to respond? I believe this, and I've said it before, but it's worth repeating. A love that cannot be tested is a love that cannot be trusted. A friendship that cannot be tested is a friendship that cannot be trusted. And a faith that can't be tested is a faith that can't be trusted. You don't know what's in somebody until they're tested. You don't know what's in yourself until you're tested. We never know until that. So every leader is going to face tests, but these are the basic tests that every one of us will face in life. And not in order of importance, but in order to get started, you got to name one. So the first one is this. It's called the test of praise. How do you handle a compliment? When somebody says something nice about you, do you let it go to your head? You know, it's kind of like the boss who called the guy in and bragged on him, and then his head was so big he couldn't get back out of the office. There's some people that can't take a compliment. There's some people, if you praise them, you ruin them. And some people, though, that know how to take it, and they say the two most important words you can say are thank you. You learn those words. When somebody says something good about you, I remember one time saying something to a musician after a service. I'd spoken somewhere and turned to the musician. I was just trying to compliment him, and I said, that was a good song. Did you know he followed me all the way to the car telling me about his credentials? Well, when I went to Juilliard, I did so-and-so, but then I sang so-and-so. And I'm like, I just said that's a good song. Good thing I didn't really ask him a deep question. He wanted to go on for 30 minutes about it. Just say these words, thank you, thank you. It's the easiest thing to say. It means the world, but you're not overreacting to it. So when it comes to praise, don't let praise go to your head. If somebody accomplishes something and you're on a team and you don't get recognized, that's okay. It's all right. It's best to go through life trying to say, I want to avoid the praise test than it is to say, give me praise. And so I say, if you can learn to pass it, you'll go pretty far. The second test is the test of pride. Now, while failure to handle praise is going to limit you, if you fail to handle pride right, it will destroy you. Pride, we call it the pride ride. There's nothing worse than somebody who suddenly gets proud and all of a sudden they forget who they are. They remind me of the woodpecker that was out chopping a tree one time. He was pecking on this big tree out in Seattle where those big, massive trees are. And while he was pecking on that tree, lightning struck the tree. And it knocked the woodpecker down, split the tree in half, and he landed on the ground, was dizzy, and he got up and flew off. He came back 10 minutes later with about 5 other woodpeckers. He said, there it is, boys, right there. That's the one I split. Well, there are a lot of people that don't realize there's other people that helped them to do what they did, but it's somehow in their mind, they're all that in a bag of chips. My wife always had this statement, pride doesn't look good on anyone. And she's right. It doesn't look good on anybody. In fact, we say it this way, pride's the only disease that'll make, the only disease that makes everybody sick except the person that's got it. And so you learn early in life not to let good things go to your head. Don't get a high view of yourself. When I see somebody that's proud, I always think, you didn't cure cancer. You didn't send a rocket to the moon. You don't walk on water. What do you have to be proud about? And I've often found the people that are most proud have the least to be proud about. I wouldn't change life with them. I'd prefer you have yours, I'll have mine. But let me tell you what the Bible says about pride. Here's some warning verses. Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before a fall, and a haughty spirit before destruction. Proverbs 11:2. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. Proverbs 28:23. Pride brings a person low. And the Lord, in Proverbs 16:5, the Lord detests the proud of heart. Because of this, they will not go unpunished. One time when Saul was convicting Samuel, he said to him, when you were little in your own eyes, that's when you were blessed. It's when you begin to think, I don't deserve, I didn't earn, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And so here's the test for yourself. If you want to know if you have a real servant's heart, how do you respond when people treat you like a servant? How do you respond when they treat you less than or low? That's the secret to it. I remember one time I was in Orlando, Florida, speaking at a conference, and there were hundreds and thousands of people there. And I came up, me and a friend of mine, and we were on the program, and I came up, and there was a group of volunteers, like our volunteers, giving coffee and things to the people in the line. And so I came up and saw that there was 3 guys just giving these volunteers a fit. The coffee's not hot enough. This is not right. and they were just holding up everything. So I said, let me just step back here and help them. Now, I stepped back and said, can I help you? And the lady was saying, I don't know. I said, here, I'll do the cups. And before you knew it, I got myself a job back there. I was doing all the coffee for people and how you doing. And these three guys were just so arrogant. And I hate to say they were all pastors. And so when we get through giving them coffee, they all get out of line. I thank the volunteers, and then I go around to the back to get ready to go speak. And when I go out to speak, of all things, I look, and guess who's on the front row? Those three guys who's been treating everybody like dirt. I mean, they're telling me the same thing about I give them the coffee. Well, that's not hot enough. You got a lid for this. And now they look like shame on their face. Like here's the guy who's speaking, and we've been over here just acting like we're all that in a bag of chips. And I remember thinking then, pride just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. And if you ever have it, I've had it myself before. You ever been proud? Be honest. Don't lie. You ever been proud? Don't you make yourself sick when you're through? I mean, there have been times I've said, oh, God, why did I say that? Why did I do it? And I hated it myself. And so watch for that. In fact, that's the quickest way to go down. The third test is what we call the test of power. Now, like praise and pride, power can mess you up. Those of you that are older remember this. You younger ones won't, but the older ones remember there used to be a television show called Mayberry RFD, and they had a detective named Barney. And Barney, they give him one bullet, and he had to keep it in his pocket. They wouldn't let him keep it in the gun. Barney, anytime the sheriff was out of town and Barney got to be in charge, Barney let everybody know he's in charge. He would arrest grandmothers for jaywalking. He would shoot a gun off in the bank. I mean, Barney would set the whole town in chaos in less than 30 minutes, all because Barney was a power tripper. Have you ever worked for a power tripper? You ever worked for somebody that you think, oh, my soul? I mean, when did God die and leave them in charge? They just literally make life miserable for everybody. I remember a lady one time, she had a husband that just made her miserable. And I said, well, what's his problem? She said he has no power at work. And the only place that anybody listens to his voice is in this home, so he makes all of us miserable. She said, I wish they'd give him a promotion at work so he'd have somebody else to boss around. Well, that's that power tripping person. Here's a question you want to ask yourself at times. Ask this about your friends. I literally did this one time. I asked the question. I learned the question years ago just thinking out loud one time. And I wrote it down. And then I wrote down the names of 10 people that were kind of close to me. And I wrote down about 6 of them that I knew were good and about 4 of them I had my doubts about. Within about a year or two, every one of them fell right where I predicted. You'll know. You just may not want to look. So let me give you this question. Ask yourself this about the people around you. If they had the power to hurt me, would they use it? If they had the power to hurt me, would they use it? And I wrote down about 4 people. I said, yes, they would. The others, I said, no, they wouldn't. And did you know within about a year or so, all of those surfaced just as predicted? And that's a good question to ask yourself so that you don't make the wrong relationships or trip. Trust your vibe. Listen to your instincts. I promise you, most of you have much better instincts and intuition than you really are aware of. And don't suppress that. Listen to your gut. Listen to what's within you. Policemen will often tell us that ladies who got in danger will say, I felt something dangerous, but I ignored it. I sensed something. So listen to that, especially with the issue of power. The second statement I make about power is this, and this is the key if you ever get a place where you have it. I have believed this for years and know it to be true. The purpose of power is to empower. The purpose of power is not so you can have it. The purpose of power is so you can use it to help others. If you're in a position where you have power, think in terms of how do I help the powerless? I'll give you an illustration. When Debbie and I first got married, we bought our first home. The first home, well, I lived in a trailer when we first got married, and things were really rough. I'll tell you about that in a moment. But I remember when I went to buy our first home, and it was going to be $79,000, and it was a new built home. They were just building it. And I remember telling Debbie, that's $79,000. Do you know that's $70,000? And I was going on about how much it was. And she said, Bill, when you go in there, be bold. Ask for $100,000. And I said, 100? Are you kidding me? Ask for 100. And so finally I said, okay, I'll do it. Well, I go into the CB&T bank. I'm waiting to take a mortgage loan. I've already given the paperwork. I'd left it there an hour or two earlier. I'm waiting in the lobby in the outside the girl's office, and a doctor is in there. I can see him, and the door's halfway open, and he's got on surgical scrubs. And she's saying, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to make that loan. You're just too overdrawn. You're too much. We can't do that. And he was arguing with her. Do you know who I am? You know how much I make a year? And I throw away more money than you make. And he was just giving all that. She said, I'm sorry, but we can't make that loan. Well, he stormed out. Now, you know what they did to me? I'm looking at a doctor in surgical uniform walking out, and they're not giving him money. And I'm about to go in there and ask for money. So I'm thinking, I better just pack up and go home. I went in and sat down. The girl's name was Patty. Some of you may know her. She passed away probably 2 months after this happened. But I sat down with her, and she said, Mr. Purvis, I've looked at your files. You have outstanding credit. She said, we'd like to make this loan. I said, well, I was going to ask you for $100. She said, no problem, we can do that. And she took a scared, afraid, didn't think I'd make it. She used her power to empower me. I got my first loan because she loaned it to us. She didn't have to do that. And 2 weeks later, I heard she was killed in Smith, Alabama. She was driving a car and hit a bus that was stopped and passed away. But I'll never forget how she made me feel when she used her power that had just told a doctor no and turned around to me and said yes. And what I say to you is you have that power. The purpose of power is to empower. Find yourself saying, how can I help this person? What can I do for that? And when you learn that rule, I promise you it makes a big difference. The fourth test. The fourth one is called the test of poverty. Now, none of us want to be poor, but if you're there, you want to learn how you respond to poverty. There's a king in the Bible. He wrote Proverbs 30. Solomon wrote all the Proverbs except one. Proverbs 30, King Agar wrote, and he made a statement in it. He says, Lord, make me neither rich nor poor. He said, lest I'm rich and I forget you, or I'm poor and I steal and hurt your name. Give me just enough that is sufficient for me. What he was saying is, God, make me content with what I have. Help me to utilize my position where I am and not be envious. See, when you have nothing, it's easy to resent people that have more. And it's a test. It's your test. How are you going to handle it if you have less and they have more? And so you can have resentment and envy. You can begrudge your place. Or you can say, let me learn from them how they did it. I used to drive people nuts. If they were successful, I literally drove them nuts. And they'll tell you. I would ask questions. I wanted to learn. I didn't resent their success. One time, Charles Tremendous Jones got a chance to come to Columbus, Georgia, and I was nearby him. World's greatest salesman. He'd written all the books, been everywhere, and I got a chance to drive him to the airport. I asked the guy that had him as a guest, can I drive him tomorrow morning to the airport? He said, yes. So I picked him up at the airport, Holiday Inn here in Columbus. This is 40 years ago. And I got me a legal pad. The night before, I had written almost 100 questions. And so I'm ready to I'm going to get the gold from him. He's got it, I'm going to get it. So we start driving, and the first thing he says to me, he says, "Now, young man, I've never had a night like this. Maybe it was something I ate, but I'm extremely sick." He said, would you, we just want to not have conversation. I'm going to sit in the back. You just drive me to Atlanta, and would that be okay with you? I looked at my questions and thought, no, that's not going to be okay. You know, I'm going to ask you these questions, or you ain't getting out of my car. And so I said okay, but I started asking questions little by little. We got up the road. He said, okay, that's enough questions. I thought, no, we got 60 more. And so I'd ask him. Finally, he blew up. I mean, he got mad. He leaned up in the front of that car, stuck his head between the seats, and he said, my God, he said, are you going to ask me 1,000,000 questions? He said, I've never been asked or interrogated so much in my life. What are you, a Philadelphia lawyer? And he just lost it. Now, I'm driving down the road, and he's screaming at me, and he's the world-famous Charles Tremendous Jones. And he said, don't ask me nothing else. I had 7 more questions. I drove, and before we got to where you turn in Atlanta Airport, I started asking. Well, he's already mad. I figured, it ain't going to hurt now. So we get out of the car. He wouldn't even let me hand him the bags. He grabbed the bags and stormed off. I know I made an impression on him, but he answered some questions. 3 years later, I was in Savannah, Georgia, speaking at a conference. And when I got through, this guy walks up to me and he says, you remember me? And it was Charles Jones. And I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, do you remember the last time we were together? I said, matter of fact, I do. And he said, I want to tell you something, son. He said, I owe you an apology. He said, I was at my worst, and you just were insistent to ask me questions. He said, I've said to this day, that boy wouldn't let up. And he said, but when I saw you up there speaking today, I said, the reason he's there is because he's hungry to learn. He said, would you forgive me? And I said, yes, sir. And I hugged his neck, shook his hand. He started to walk off, and I had to do it. I said, Mr. Jones? He said, yeah. I said, can I ask you a question? Here's what he did. He just went, threw his hand up and kept walking. What I'm telling you, though, even if you're broke, ask the people that have money, how do you do this? What do you recommend? Learn. Here's what will happen. When you are going through the toughest times, and I mentioned Debbie and I we lived in a trailer. We had an old police car I bought at an Atlanta auction. If you got in the back seat, you couldn't get out. It was $500 what I paid for it. Had, I don't know how many miles on it. We bought furniture in our home, one piece at a time. Literally, we bought a kitchen table. Then later we bought one chair. Then we bought another chair. And they would even say, well, come down here and get the whole thing. You can just pay us. And I'd say, no, we're going to pay as we go. And so we were so broke, we couldn't pay attention. I mean, we were so poor, the poor people called us poor. But we literally watched every dime. We watched it. We invested it. We did what we could. And so we got out of that. But I know what it's like to be in poverty. I know what it's like to cut a roll of bologna sandwiches, and that's what you eat that week. It's what we did. But, you know, so it didn't hurt us. Think about this. If you were ever poor, you probably learned more during that time. You'll probably appreciate more during that time than you would any other time. So it's not bad. You don't want to go back, but you also say, I learned something there, so it's good. There's another test. The fifth one is this. It's the test of prosperity. Now, this is when you're not poor, but this is when you're on the other side of it. Money and success, by the way, they don't change somebody. They only reveal what's in them. Years ago, there was a blackout in New York City. This was many years ago. They had a blackout in downtown New York. And people started getting out of their cars and breaking glasses and stealing televisions and radios and all this stuff. And when they finally got it caught, they pulled it all up on film, the people doing it were your everyday, modern, working people that were on their way home from work. But when the blackout came, they did it. Now, here's what it told me. Did they become a thief when they stole, or were they already a thief in their heart? They just never had an opportunity. But when they saw everybody else doing it, that was their opportunity. Who you are is really already there. When money changes somebody, it didn't change them. All it did is reveal who they were. Success doesn't do anything but show what's already on the inside. What's down in the well does come up in the bucket. And so when a person suddenly gets a little something and now all of a sudden it's gone to their head and they feel superior and they're unteachable and all the rest, those people are headed on that route of prosperity to some bad places. Other people may not hurt you. If you've got money, you know, when you didn't have money, you had to do what others said. When you've got money, you got freedom, you got options. But the problem is, you have to police yourself. Nobody else can hurt you, but you can hurt yourself. So you got to watch your own self at that point. And then there's another, and that's this. Here's the latter gift of the sixth one, is this. It's this test of priorities. We all have priorities in our life. The priorities are what's most important to us. And when I look at where my thoughts, time, and energy goes, it goes to my priorities. So ask yourself this question. What are the priorities of my life? If you can figure out what your priority is, that's how you get free. My priority ought to be, and mine, I'll give you mine. Mine are faith. My faith is my priority. That above everything else, that's going to be my faith. I hang out when I live in California with a group of people that they don't know God, they don't go to church, they don't talk about God, and the majority of them have spent at least 10 or more years in prison for some pretty tough crimes. I hang out with those folks. We eat together, we associate. They don't change me. I hope to have an influence on them. We're friends, and I love them. But my faith is anchored. And I tell you, that's where your faith ought to be. For me, it's number one. My family is number two. I believe this. Give your best to the people that are going to cry the deepest at your funeral. If you're trying to please everybody out there, I got news for you. Those people that follow you on Instagram and all the likes you get, they won't be there when you have a need. They're just there to like those moments. Give your best to the people that's going to cry the deepest, the people that's going to mean the most to. And so your priorities in life ought to be that. And then after that, you can have other priorities. You can have health or recreation or whatever. You can find those things. But though you find out what your priorities are, and then you put them in the order they are, and then you begin to let those direct you. Your priorities could be your values, whatever those are. But you figure that out. Personal growth is a value of mine. It's a priority. And so if I can define that, the test of your priorities are going to decide how far you go and how long you stay when you get there. So there's 6 tests, all right? Test of praise, of pride, of power, of poverty, of prosperity, and a priority. Now, the question is this. If you can look at any of those, which ones are you going to struggle with the most? If you know in advance what you're going to struggle with, it helps you. I had a guy years ago that was good looking. I mean, I used to say, I ain't never seen nobody. He'd walk in a room, every guy would envy and every girl would look. And he would just walk around, and he used to tell me, he'd say, I can't help it. He said, look at this. And he'll pull out his hand, and he'll say, these are all phone numbers I've been given today. Just women walk up to him. I was with him at a bank one time. He walked up to put something in the card. The lady pulls up the card to get the ATM. She comes over and hands him a card, had on the back of it, call me. His looks, and he used to say, I'm tested all the time with that. He said, I'm tested with the opposite sex. I'm tested with women. And I would say, really? I would joke with him sometimes. I say, I thought you just always gave in to it. He said, no, I really do say no. He's lost, but that was his test. And he used to say, if I could ever get a handle on that, Bill, I could be a good Christian. That was his big struggle. And I say, if you come to God first, He'll give you the power to overcome the things that are weak in your life. But that may not be yours, but it may be something else. If you got money, would you change? If you won the lottery tomorrow, what you going to do with it? Would all of a sudden you say, now I'm going to show them. I'm walking off from this job. Literally, you got to stop and say, in my test, how am I going to handle it? So acknowledge it. And then adapt this attitude that I believe will help you in almost everything. It does me in times when I don't like it. And that is, just say, this is my test. When somebody is angry with me, I have to say, now, Bill, this is my test. If somebody's got a conflict with me, this is my test. Whatever is going on, if you can say, this is my test, that's usually the best way to overcome, because then you can look at it from an approach of, how do I want to do this so that I can look back with no regret? You're going to have a lot of tests in life. The benefit is, as you pass those tests, it'll put you in places you wouldn't have been otherwise. And you look at the people that are vetted, look at the people that have made it, and I promise you, they've had a whole lot of tests. Ask a Dan Parker today, how do you do it? He said, I'll tell you what the tests are. The tests are getting up in the morning and being able to make my day, because I don't have the advantage other people have. That's a test for Dan every day. Every one of us have tests. Today, just decide, I'm going to pass them. Praise, poverty, prosperity, whatever it is. Priorities, I will literally pass that test today. And when something comes my way, I'm going to look at it like, when I come out of this on the other side, I'll be better. You'll bear fruit. You'll make a difference. At the end of the day, people will say, when you came across my life, I'm better because of it. Thanks for listening to me today. I pray that God blesses your life. I want to pray a prayer of blessing over you as they come and wrap it up. Father, thank you for everyone that are here today. I pray your blessings on them. I pray your grace on them. I pray your strength. I pray particularly, Lord, for those that are in difficult situations, either at work or at home. Father, would you give them wisdom to make the right decisions? Would you show them options if they feel they have none? Would you hear their prayers and guide their steps, I ask. And bless their day, we ask, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being here today.
Yes, thank you, Pastor Bill. That was an awesome lesson that we all got to hear today. And I know that y'all all got to take away some awesome things from that lesson. But for me personally, I was just sitting back there and I was thinking about the test of power and how the test of power is not meant to break a leader, but it's meant to shape a leader and to empower those that follow them. So that's just something that stood out to me today from our lesson. But right now, as y'all walked in, you all got handed a little raffle ticket. So I'm about to pull our ticket out of our bucket and see who won that gift card today. All right, so get your tickets out. That number is going to be 755-4056. 755-4056. Y'all can claim that prize outside at the table with all the t-shirts and stuff like that. As y'all are walking out today, please feel free to grab some free Jeremiah's Ice. We've got that outside of the parking lot. That's all that we have for y'all today. Please come and join us next month for BP Leadership. That is going to be on October 2nd. Thank y'all.